Customer journeys and operator partnerships. I am Akanksha Sharma. I am a senior director leading our digital utilities program at the GSMA Mobile for Development. Let me quickly give you an idea about today's agenda. On to the next slide. Yeah. So we will kick off with a brief introduction about the GSMA and the digital utilities program by myself. We will then have Koen Peters from Gogla speak about the evolution of PAYG sector. Following this, my colleague Zach White will take you through our findings from the latest research, followed by a panel discussion where Zach will be joined by key representatives from MTN Uganda, Andre, Vid Energy, and Koen again from Gogla. And then we'll wrap up with some reflections and close. But before we get into the meat of the conversation, I'd like you to very briefly know about the GSMA and our program. So we at GSMA, we are an association of 750 plus mobile operators and 400 plus organizations in the broader mobile ecosystem. And through our Mobile for Development team, we seek to drive innovation in digital technology to reduce inequalities in the world. Now, we know that 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities by 2050, with most urban growth concentrated in Africa and Asia. Onto the next slide, Zach. So we'll have a majority of the population living in the cities by 2050, and the low-income populations living in these urban areas lack affordable, reliable, and safe access to utility services. This is very costly for the residents, and the residents end up spending more money and time to access these services than would be ideal. But it's not just the residents, it's also costly for the society at large. It's making cities less resilient to challenges. It decreases the productivity overall of the urban areas, reduces social mobility, and prevents transition at large towards a low carbon urban future. At the same time, the expansion of mobile connectivity through LMICs has enabled the emergence of digital solutions that are making these essential urban services more accessible, more affordable, reliable, and sustainable. And these solutions can play a vital role in making our cities more resilient to challenges posed by population growth, by climate change, and the persistent inequality that we see. Our digital utilities program supports exactly these and works to build urban resilience in low and middle income countries. And so basically through mobile and digital solutions, as simple as maybe calls and messaging, or as complex as remote sensing, big data analytics, or artificial intelligence, our program is looking to bridge 5 big gaps linked to affordability of services, connectivity, reliability, and urban planning, as well as improving the safety of urban services. Now, how do we do it? We do it through 4 major types of interventions. Onto the next slide, Zach. Firstly, we provide grants to private sector innovators to test and demonstrate the role of digital urban service solutions. We've recently announced a new batch of grantees. I'm not sure if someone can just drop the link to the latest new grantees in the chat, it'll be great. The other thing we do is we conduct rigorous research and evidence collection on innovative solutions on the back of the grants that we have been giving in the past, we are giving currently, and broadly, about the trends that we see in the ecosystem. Today's webinar is focused on one such research. We convene and drive replication and scale through bringing different stakeholders together, leveraging our own networks, which is particularly mobile operators, because we are a mobile operator association, as well as those of the key partners that we work with. And finally, we provide advice on the role of digital innovation and insights on how to achieve multi-stakeholder partnerships. So those are the 4 key ways in which we work. And this, as you can imagine, was a rather abridged version of what we do at GSMA Mobile for Development, and specifically through Digital Utilities Program. We'd love to hear from you and talk to you should any of this be of interest. We can tell you more about it. But now, without any delay, I'd like to invite Koen Peters, who is the Executive Director of the Global Association of Off-Grid Solar Energy Industry, GOGLA, to tell us a bit about the evolution of PAYG industry that GOGLA have deeply contributed to throughout their journey so far. Thank you, and over to you, Koen.
Thank you very much, Akanksha. Really nice to be here. GOGLA has been working with GSMA since the beginning. Actually, I think GSMA we've always seen as our big sibling that shows us the way for the off-grid solar industry, is setting an example of how to be an effective industry association for impactful business in developing countries. So I'm really glad to be here. Let me walk you through a bit of a high-level presentation of how the PAYG sector has developed. Zach, if you can put on the next slide. Maybe first a little bit about GOGLA. We are the industry association for the off-grid solar energy industry. We've got around 230 members at the moment. We're celebrating 10 years of existence, doing things that industry associations do, just like the GSMA. We are an advocate. We're the voice of the industry, an advocate for the industry. We collect market information. We create events and convene, and we discuss within the industry around standards and how to do business responsibly and provide guidance to our members. Onto PAYG industry. So the off-grid solar industry has been existing for a couple of decades, but as a rather marginal business in particularly countries like India and Kenya, where people were trying to sell solar panels to power black and white televisions and compact fluorescent lights. And that received a big push around 2010 or so, when white LED lighting made much more compact products possible, and falling solar and PV battery cost enabled companies to produce much better technology at much lower prices, and suddenly bringing off-grid solar technology within reach and making it cost competitive as a solution for electrification of households in developing nations. And that really gave a push to solar lantern markets from that time. And then a couple of years later, it was particularly MCOPA who started with this, but other companies jumping on that opportunity fairly soon after by putting technology into those products that enabled them to be remotely switched on and off, and combining it with mobile money. It says IO, Internet of Things here. There's a bit of a grand word, and not all the solutions always needed internet connectivity, and not all the solutions always needed mobile money. But it meant that solar home systems could be provided with a financing package to households for people with no credit history. And that has definitely pushed industry in a big way. And we still see those developments, both the technology of compact plug-and-play solutions and PAYG solar for solar home systems and solar lighting still being pushed further. And from around 2015, 2016 onwards, we also saw that people were starting to package appliances into the financing solution that PAYG offered, putting radios, televisions, other appliances, sometimes school loans into those solutions. That is also a trend that's still happening. We also see companies offering larger range of system sizes. The biggest sales are still in smaller systems. And increasingly, we see PAYG also being applied to smaller products and even solar lanterns. But we see companies also offering larger systems in their product range, and now looking at products that include also AC/DC converters and inverters into their packages. And what we see happening right now is that companies are trying to apply the same kind of concepts, not just to solar home systems, but apply them to standalone products that are that don't involve a solar home systems anymore, such as smartphones, water pumps, agri-processing equipment, and LPG cook stoves. And that's an interesting development where we are looking at also ourselves when some of our companies are diversifying away from electrification and looking more at the a broader range of consumer goods. Can I have the next slide, Zach? In terms of where we stand in terms of market growth, if we look at the market for pico-solar and solar home systems, you can see that over the last 3 years or so, the market has been a little bit stagnant, with COVID having a big impact on that, of course. But we see a decline in cash sales, whereas pay-as-you-go has consistently been growing throughout the years and also through COVID, and now at levels back higher than where we were from before COVID. That consistent, healthy growth we've been seeing, but I also want to put in here a reality check. We are now selling around 1.5 million products on PAYG every half year, so roughly 2.5–3 million products a year, combined with that number that Aksanka gave us for the total number of people that are on poor electrification. I think the number that we saw was 3.5 billion. There's 700 million that don't have any energy access at all, and a lot of people that are on very poor grids. This shows that we are just at the beginning. We've made a sizable beginning, but it's still a beginning of the market. Can you move to the next slide, Zach? So this is around the investment that we've seen throughout the years. And not all of this is PAYG, but increasingly PAYG is dominating the investment trends. And what we've seen is that the investment declined a little bit since 2019 and 2020, having been stagnant for about five years. And last year we've been seeing a growth in investment, particularly with growing debt. And the underlying story here is that a small number of companies, three companies, the top 3 taking around 2/3 of the market, and the top 10 taking 90% or so of the market, are successful in getting investment, and particularly getting debt. And then there's a large trail of smaller companies getting equity investment and grants, but at much lower investment tickets. The underlying story here is that we see a number of companies that are successful in achieving profitability or getting close towards profitability, and that definitely helps in fundraising and becoming more attractive. But on the whole, the industry has still struggled with becoming profitable, and that of course is not very strange when you look at the market that we try to address, the poorest and most remote customers that don't have energy access yet, and the low share of subsidy and grants in our market to date. And we haven't been able to address that, but we are increasingly calling on governments and donors and multilateral development banks to help with the public funding to leverage more investment into the market, and we'll also see that in PAYG. So whereas in 2016, 2017, PAYG was seen as a silver bullet solution that would add profitability to the market and would allow scale, this hasn't really borne out, and we saw that reflected in the investment trends later in the years. But we think we are back on track towards a steady growth, but not fast enough to deliver universal energy access by 2030 as agreed in the Sustainable Development Goals. Zach, can you click on? Then some other key trends that we are seeing in the market. The market started with very extensively vertically integrated companies that are doing everything from product design and manufacturing towards distribution and all the financing, packaging around that, etc. And the trend has been going on for a number of years already, that companies are trying to focus on what they're good at and specialize. There's more hardware available off the shelf. There's more software available off the shelf. There's more specialization in specific roles around distribution, credit assessment, etc. And I think particularly in our conversation of how can the mobile telecom market operate with the off-grid solar market, that creates new areas of partnerships where people can come together with different roles in the market and jointly look at what are their strengths and how can they jointly work at scaling up businesses. We are definitely looking at more public-private partnerships and more public funding going into the market to subsidize products. We see a number of countries getting some traction and also seeing some results, but also a lot of markets where this is not happening yet or not enough, or where subsidy schemes are still too much a one-off, or public funding is not sustainable or applied in the smartest way yet. So there's a lot of opportunity for improvement and learning, but we definitely see in the last few years some promising developments and examples of how we can do that better. And then thirdly, what we are seeing is that the performance of industry is becoming more to the forefront. It's not just enough to have a business model and a good product. The performance overall needs to be good, and getting customers satisfied and protecting their interests is key there, because it's only the paying customers in the end, but only the satisfied customers that are the paying customers. And of course, this is crucial in delivering operational and financial success. Gogla has been working on for a number of years on getting some more transparency in the market on the operational performance of companies and financial performance, and some more transparency on the portfolios that companies are holding and the portfolio quality. We definitely see areas where there's needs to improve the performance of the industry as a whole, and to be more transparent around that, so as to sustain the sustainability of the industry. So my final slide, Zach, is that we are continuing working with GSMA on those consumer insights. We are continuing our work on getting transparency around that performance. There's more information coming out in a couple of months. We are working at a next market trends report that should be presented later this summer. And there's a big event coming up. Our biannual forum is due in Rwanda in October, where we will discuss a lot of trends around the PAYG sector and how it branches out to areas that are also connecting with the mobile telecom market. So I'm stopping there and passing back to you, Akshanka and Zach.
Thanks, Cohen. I'll take over at this point. My name is Zach White. I'm a Senior Insights Manager with the Digital Utilities team, and I led on the research that will be presented today. I'm going to take you through a 10-minute presentation, roughly, on the research, and then we'll shift to the panel discussion. Now, I don't expect it's needed for this audience, but the relationship between pay-as-you-go and mobile services is a great place to start. I think, as Cohen outlined, it was one of the key evolutions in the off-grid solar space, and has kind of remained part of it as we've seen that de-verticalization and also diversification in the products offering. And really, there's three central planks of what mobile offers the energy sector. Of course, remote and digital payments, but also for the remote locking and controlling of different assets. And then, of course, enabling communications between service providers, their customers, and local agents. As Akanksha mentioned, we, as the GSMA, give grants, innovation grants to different solutions across the utility sectors. And our experience traces a lot of the evolution of the pay-as-you-go sector. So we began giving some of our very earliest grants around 2013 to some of the now major solar companies. Some of those listed have been acquired by others. And as Cohen so excellently outlined, there's some really impressive numbers, even though there is space for more. But what is exciting and is reflected very much in our grant giving is that we are seeing replication across many different services and use cases, and we continue to support the evolution of the pay-as-you-go sector through that. So turning now to our research specifically on pay-as-you-go solar, we have two key pieces published 2 years apart. The first in 2020 was a quantitative study looking across 5 African markets and analysing the data of over 200,000 pay-as-you-go users. What we did in that study was to look at the 6 months before and the 6 months after solar adoption to look at the change in the use of mobile services, and then compared that to a comparison group of customers that had similar profiles but did not adopt pay-as-you-go solar. And I'll present the key results from that in a moment. But that study, while successful in really evidencing the value that is there, left a lot of questions around exactly how and why people change their behaviour. So last year, and published this year, we conducted a follow-up study with 2 of those operators in Benin and Côte d'Ivoire, where we updated the quantitative analysis for new cohorts of customers, and then selected customers based on the change seen in their behaviour, and then conducted some in-depth qualitative interviews to really unpack and understand behaviour change. So very quickly on the first study, there's 4 stats that really sum up some of the key impacts that we see on the use of mobile services. A huge increase in the number of transactions on mobile money. And what's not on this slide but is in that report is that the transactions were not just for the solar, but we saw increases across all types of transaction types. And related to that, across the different markets, 21 to 31% of those pay-as-you-go customers were new to mobile money or reactivated accounts. In Côte d'Ivoire, interestingly, we also saw a 31% increase in mobile internet penetration. And then the stat that really sums it all up is across all of the 5 markets, the average, and it was remarkably consistent across the 5, was a 9% uplift in ARPU for that group of pay-as-you-go customers versus the comparison group. So really clear, really well evidenced statistics there that, you know, the use of mobile services really does increase as people gain energy access through pay-as-you-go solar. Turning now to, pardon me, our new research. We identified 10 key factors why people change their behaviour, and we related these to whether they predominantly affected voice and data or mobile money services. The first set of factors that I'll present are those related to shifts in lifestyle and habit as a result of energy access. And the first and most obvious is that people had their phones charged and not more often. I think it's a really obvious one, but it was unquestionably the biggest impact that we have. But I think it highlights, you know, that with first-time energy access or more improved reliability, people really do use that as an opportunity to shift their behaviour. Also in the lifestyle group, a lot of the changes we see with people having light and power into the evenings and how that shifts social norms and habits. And also a lot of people use their solar home system for business, resulting in higher earnings, some of which is spent on more mobile services, some of which just means that there's more transactions. Turning now to the mobile money, the first and most important factor is that because of making these payments, people are making frequent cash-ins, and that's creating the opportunity to use mobile money services more, because we know, especially with a lot of rural customers, the transaction costs of reaching agents can be quite high. So it's really that the impetus to see an agent creating opportunities. But we also see a whole set of other significant factors related to people's confidence in mobile money, from learning how to use it, people gaining trust from making regular payments, and also incentives to keep money within the ecosystem because of making future solar payments. The last set of factors we identified were really those that relate to people's choices and consumption habits, and these include switching operators to the one that was partnered with the PAYG company, or taking up link subscriptions and add-ons, or discovering new services. So for each of these 10 factors, and I'm not going to go into it in detail now for time, but we unpacked how, for whom, and when. And the way we did that was 3 behavior change frameworks. And the first was to look at whether that particular factor touched on someone's capabilities, their motivations, or gave them the opportunity to do something. The second was to draw attention to the dimensions of customer personas that were most important to that aspect of behavior change. And finally, we looked at where in the solar home system journey that there was the most opportunity for behavior change associated with that factor. So turning to the personas, very broadly, there's 2 groups. The one on the left being these nascent mobile money users gaining access to first time, using a feature phone, lower incomes, often more rural. But also on the right, there was a group of customers clearly identified who are existing mobile money users, using it for power, using more data, and generally had higher incomes. And throughout the report, we highlight that, whilst not perfectly, some of those 10 factors map more clearly to one of those persona groupings than the others. And as I said before, there's more details of this throughout the report, but I won't go into it now. In terms of the customer journey, we had hypothesized that, the sales and awareness raising might influence behavior, and that different approaches there might result in different behavior change. We found no evidence to support this. What we did find was that onboarding was one of the first kind of critical moments in which behavior change was shifted, particularly in cases where this was a key moment for learning about mobile money or mobile services. Payments, of course, as mentioned, is a huge driver of behavior change, but not least in terms of incentivizing it, but the opportunities that it creates in terms of people interacting. And then finally, we see some of the biggest drivers of change coming from the impacts, the different use cases, and the add-ons. And this is where we see all of those factors associated with changing social norms, earnings, those making rational purchasing decisions based on discovering new services. My final slide is just a quick reflections on the so what of this from our perspective. I think the first is that this research adds some value in terms of providing good evidence for the linkages that many people in the sector have long seen, and really underscores those deep synergies between energy and connectivity as services that both people want and also that work together very well. The differing customer segments and those different incentives around behavior change are something that we gave a lot of attention to in the research, and they have strong implications for how you target different customer segments within partnerships, particularly if you're looking to develop new customers, perhaps those who are more rural and who are first-time users of data or mobile money services, or if it's that existing customer base who are developing their incomes or add-on products. Third, and as highlighted, the research really clearly draws attention to exactly where those synergies are, which again reflects where partnerships can be most relevant. And in the report, we do include recommendations on thinking about deepening synergies across the customer journey. And finally, while it's speculation, we think that this research has finding relevance across those different pay-as-you-go use cases as we talk about shifting to pay-go everything. While there are some very particular things that are specific to energy, we think that a lot of the other mechanics identified in this research are likely to remain relevant across, all of those different services, be it clean cooking or cooling or any of the other mentioned. So we think that this research does have broader relevance and remains so as even in those developed solar markets. So I'll turn now to introducing our excellent panel. Moving clockwise from top left, Beatrice is a manager within MTN's mobile money division in Uganda. In 2020, nearly 50 billion in transaction was processed in the Ugandan mobile money ecosystem, and it's estimated to have 25% year-on-year growth. And MTN Uganda have only over 15 million subscribers within the country. Julien is CEO of Engie Energy Access. Engie provide mini-grid and pay-go solutions in 9 African countries. To date, they have served 1.5 million customers and impacted the lives of over 7 million people. Cohen is the executive director of Gogla, and Gogla has been comprehensively introduced, so I'll move past. And last but not least, Liliane is the CEO of With Energy. With Energy is a woman-led provider of Pico solar products in Zambia. They operate a door-to-door sales model and to date have reached over 10,000 customers. I'll now stop sharing and invite the panelists to turn on their videos so we can kickstart the discussion. So I'll start by asking each of the panelists to respond quickly to the report and the reflections they have about how it's relevant to their work. We'll then turn to any questions there may be in the chat. So if you have any, this is the moment to please start popping them in. And I think I'll start in the order that I introduced everyone. So Beatrice, Julien, Cohen, and Liliane in that order. So yeah, Beatrice, kicking us off with the question of, what do you take from this research and how do you understand it in the context of your work managing?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Zach. I think I lost you a bit there, but thanks once again and thanks for having me. So for the research right now in MTN Mobile Money, Uganda Limited, we currently have 8 partners, pay-go partners that are currently running on our platform. And the key highlights that stood out for us from the report, and I should say I went back and not double check, but went back and ran our own insights with our business intelligence team to confirm that whatever the report is speaking to is the same trend that we are seeing in Uganda. So we saw a growth increase in revenues across all the services, be it basic or the advanced revenue services, which was around 53% on average in terms of volume, and then around 44% in terms of the value that we are seeing coming through the partners. So we saw that we also saw an increase in the frequency of cash-ins. The data that we looked for was looking at the last 6 months, October 2021 to April 2022. That is the controlled groups that we used to look at the trends to confirm that they speak to the report that you have just shown us. So we saw an increase across all the revenues. But one interesting thing that stood out for us is we saw more than 100% increase in data usage, in the value spent in buying data. And that speaks to the fact that most of the PAYG customers that we have are currently bundling the solar solutions with also smartphones. But also as a business, we've put incentives around the smartphone adoption, where we do subsidies when we pick the IMAs of our network. And we've also tried to zero rate the collections of device financing to make sure that that is data usage also grows. So we were happy to see that there is an increase in the spend on data through the device financing and everything. But also you talked about in your report the adoption of new services and not just the payment for solar. So we saw that also coming through across the board, and the services cut across all our advanced services, but also spoke to services where we saw these customers who took on the solar solutions also take on other lending services like the more cash that we have and everything. So it kind of gave us a strategy that these customers do not stop at only borrowing for or taking on the solar lending scheme, but also go on to adopt other lending services that we have in the ecosystem. So basically, those are the key highlights that stood out for us, and we were happy about the growth that we are seeing through across the board. And from our side, maybe before I go off, we've also done a lot of work to support a few partners, not all of the 8, but a few partners that are running off our platform, where we have tried to enable their distribution, and we've supported them by allowing them to put up sell points in our touch points and service centers, so that they can reach out to more of our customers, right? And then for some of the partners still who are doing PAYG, we've also given them incentives where we've bundled their services with data bundles. So those are some of the things we are doing, and we have also done some joint marketing campaigns to ensure that we also support the PAYG solar partners in the growth of the services and having more customers onto the platform. So we are very happy about the results, and as one of our strategy, we are really looking forward to push and partner with more PAYG solar partners, because we've seen that it has a lot of impact, especially in the rural areas. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Beatrice. I'm really interested to hear about those partnerships and how you're looking at them and thinking about them. Also a very interesting point in lending on other products and services. That speaks to some of what Poen mentioned on the evolution. Julien, I'll turn to you next to reflect, but also thinking there particularly about the fact that, Engie works across 9 countries, 9 different markets with different partnerships in each of those. So I think, part of the question there is what is your experience in partnering with so many different MNOs across so many different contexts?
That's a very good question. Thank you, Zach. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here today. Just maybe to summarize and also echo what Beatrice said, the report is really consistent with what we see in our 9 markets. Your report is covering 5 of our markets, both quantitatively and also qualitatively. The first one is the number of transactions. It's increasing year by year. For us, over the past 2 years, is 34%, for instance, which is a little bit below what Beatrice said, but we reached like 27 million of transactions in 1 year last year over our 9 countries, of course, but still, it's quite a tremendous number of transactions. And when we look at these activities, we could say, okay, it's only seen on the figures, but it does appear as well in other aspects of our business, which is the customer centricity and also the interaction with customer in our call centers. And there, most of the calls are related to payments because there is an issue on network or because they don't know how to process the payments, but also to find Momo agents because they would like to be able to charge and to be able to process the payments. This being said, we have 6,000 agents across our 9 countries. They are not exclusively working for us. So when you say in your report that there are other activities which are triggered by a first, let's say, experience in using Momo for solar activities, it does make sense to us as well. The training has been very important in shortening the customer journey between the first time they heard about mobile payment and the time they do it efficiently. And hence, for us, what has been also very important is when we demystify the financial services of a virtual, let's say, mobile activity by linking it to our assets, which is definitely a plus as well in making this type of payment more, let's say, approachable and also reliable. This being said, you were talking about partnership. Since we started, we had 2 types of partners. One is MTN, and it was in Zambia, Uganda, and Benin. We had a type of partnership where, of course, we discussed about airtime, we discussed about data. We had at that time a kind of co-branding on our casing. We were reopening those partnerships and discussing about it, but we put it on hold because, as you know, we have rebranded all our activities, and our brand now is across our 9 countries and called MySol for our products. So we are more than happy to reopen those discussions. The second partnership, which has been a very, very powerful tool and also a success, is with Vodacom in Mozambique. Same kind of partnership, same discussion. Now, if we look into the future, I do believe that we need to find mutual ground and a respectful way to grow this business together. There are a lot of evidence that you mentioned yourself. The link between solar and mobile money is definitely there. I think creativity and also dedication to move to the next stage with MNOs would be instrumental in moving to phase 2. You were talking about content, you were talking about education, you are talking about different type of products, using platforms, penetration of mobile phone. I do believe that there is also a very much interest in stickiness to the mobile network operator, especially when our products are featured with specific SIM cards. And so all of this could be definitely the next subject of a third report with the support of Gopa and yourself, if you are up to. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. It is a tempting prospect and maybe where we need some more work. Continuing in order, Cohen, I'll turn to you next. Again, just inviting you for any reflections on the research in the context of the book. But also thinking about, you know, some of what you said in your presentation about this diversification of pay-as-you-go everything, and the difference we're starting to see, whereas a lot of companies looked very similar 5 years ago, now many are taking very different paths in terms of how they specialize. And any reflections you might have on what that means for mobile operators looking to understand the sector in the context of forming partnerships.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Gillian already took and Beatrice took already away some of the work for me. I think of this research basically in 2 angles. First, it's consumer research, which is always good to really understand what is the evidence of the impact that we achieve with impactful industries that still benefit from public funding support and impact investment support. And this kind of research is always enormously helpful to strengthen our story towards governments, towards donors on why they should support this industry, because it really creates meaningful, detailed stories of how our work pans out in the life of real people. And secondly, I think this research really helps to understand how exactly it benefits customers and what customers really want and what they struggle with. And I think that really helps to understand how partnerships can work better together. How mobile operators can work more together with off-grid solar industry. When your first report came out, we also had a webinar. We talked about how mobile operators have been working together with off-grid solar, but still a little bit superficial with providing mobile payment platforms, sometimes acting as an investor, sometimes lending their name towards distribution, but not real in-depth partnerships. And as Gillian, I think, has been pointing out, this kind of research shows how the interests are really connected, how using solar home systems to keep phones charged really leads to more activity, how the customers have issues around mobile payments that are really affecting the interest of the off-grid solar companies, and how those interests are really connected. And I think that creates some new understanding of why mobile operators and off-grid solar companies should really look at partnerships, more in-depth partnerships around distribution, about consumer relationships, around all those things that Gillian and Beatrice talked about. And then indeed, you mentioned about the diversity of companies. I don't think one off-grid solar company should be connected with one brand of mobile operators. I think the networking and partnerships can be much more fluid and dynamic than that. But if we have more information about exactly what different companies are doing and how they diversify, then you can also get some smarter partnerships and more detailed partnerships per region, per country, per product and technology type. So I think that this kind of research really supports that kind of dialogue.
Thanks, Cohen. And Liliane, turning to you and With Energy's perspectives. And I guess a couple of framing remarks from me are, following what Cohen said, a lot of the money in the sector is being captured by, a lot of the investment in the sector is going to a few companies. But I think, With Energy represents, those many smaller solar players that we see across different markets. So yeah, within that context, wondering, what you took from the findings, but also what your experience is in partnering with mobile operators within Zambia.
Thank you very much, Zach. Thanks for the audience. Thanks for the other panelists. Wide Energy is maybe a small correction of your presentation. We are last mile distributors of solar home system, but also other solar products. We are actually one of the recent grantees, which also speaks into the report that you have just published. We are with the GSMA project. We are expanding internet expansion and internet adoption. And this, for us as Wide Energy, we are targeting the first-time users, but also underprivileged. This whole report would speak better to the underprivileged and the off-grid customers that are not always responding to some of the factors that we are considering. Having said that, the report is very much insightful. We've been able to see clearly what we've been experiencing in this business, exactly as a startup, off-grid, to the most of our customers being farmers, mostly not really educated, and seeing the differences and what can influence some of the factors that we see in our business. It clearly nailed what we always see, and it has given us an opportunity to deepen our way of understanding how we do the business in this industry. The most important part that I take away with this report is the partnership between the off-grid into energy and the MNOs. I am amazed by the progress made in Uganda. And that's definitely, this would speak to countries that have not yet accessed to that type of partnership, to economies or businesses that are still not relating to each other as partners, maybe sometimes as competitors in a way. So this has been very insightful for us. We just need to emphasize the fact that partnership between the MNOs and our business will only have to be realized when we take that intentional, that purpose of serving the customers better. We basically have to piggyback on each other. We are a small company, but we've accessed more than 10,000 households. And those 10,000 households are solar home system customers, but they are also MNOs customers in a way. Those are 10,000 customers, but each household will have maybe more than one phone to use. Maybe each household will be able to connect to their phones, and they'll be definitely able to make more calls than none. So emphasizing the point that energy access and connectivity are basically working hand in hand. I've also taken a point on the need for the agents working for MNOs, but also being able to serve the same purpose for the PAYG companies. We've had instances, again, we are in the off-grid area, we're in a remote place in Zambia, where an agent will maybe refuse to serve the customer because I'm not on that network. I don't operate for that company. I'm strictly on this specific company. If we look at the network of our sales agents to date, we've recruited and trained more than 600 sales agents that basically work on a commission. Their commission is received on their mobile money. They're able to assist customers into making payment to if a customer does not have cash in their wallet. So they would serve a different purpose. They would increase connectivity to our customers that are PAYG customers, but also MNOs customers, really, if we look at it. If our customers are able to have that connectivity within the week, when they're making payment regularly, the whole family enjoys that connectivity. That household, the neighbors enjoy that connectivity, but it also works the same way. If our customers that are really in the rural area are not able to make the payment because of a bad connectivity, because they cannot have access to our call center because of bad connectivity, they do not have to make the payment, they do not have energy that week, the neighbors are not able to connect their phones. So it's a whole really linkage between our MNOs and our PAYG. For Zambia in particular, we are integrated with our MNOs, but I guess the relationship stops there. It's really an interesting topic that we should take, that we should see that 10,000 as 100,000 calls, right? And yeah, that's really what I took out of this. It's a partnership between the MNOs and the off-grid into energy companies. And also emphasizing the proximity of mobile money agents that could serve everybody and improve the customer service that we are giving to our customers. I want to call them our customers because they are ours and they are also for the MNOs. Thank you.
Thank you, Liliane. And I think raising some really important challenges about the reality of the customer base being served, but also some of the opportunities, and also some really interesting points on exclusivity partnerships there, which I know has been an issue for some other providers. We're running right up to the time, but Beatrice, I'd actually like to finish with one question from you to you, and it's really on, as an MNO, listening to some of what the sector want from you and what they look to you for, but sitting from your position in forging these partnerships or deciding where to put effort in partnerships, how do you look at the pay-as-you-go sector compared to other sectors? And also, how do you decide where to put your effort in terms of you know, the limited number of partnerships within any given time you can develop. Basically, who do you choose to work with, to put the effort to work with?
Okay, thank you, Zach. So in regards to partnerships, I'll speak to Uganda, but also to the strategy from MTN Group. So MTN Group has a strategy of building one of the most valuable platforms, and they're looking at building in the FinCo space or fintech space, where I see 5 unicorns, that is e-commerce, payments, bank tech, remittances, and bank tech, e-commerce, remittances, can double check, and InsurTech. All right. So in our partnerships, when a company comes to us, we always first look at whether they're aligned to that strategy. Do they fall under one of those unicorns that we want to build in one of those categories? All right. But that said, when we are looking at the partner, also we look at innovativeness, because, you know, we want to have the best solutions and bring on board the best solutions that the market hasn't had. So we look at innovativeness. What are you trying to partner with us to deliver to the client? What problem statement are you trying to solve? So with that, we'll look at the solution, and then if it's aligned to the strategy, we will take it up and we will develop with the partner. We also look at the agility and speed to market. That is the partner's agility in terms of the development, and, you know, because we have timelines and knowing our platforms, there is a lot of push coming through and different developments that are being requested by different partners. So we really look out for partners who are very agile and fast at developing whatever we are developing from their end, so that we can integrate their platform with our platform and then deliver the solution to the customer at the end of the day. But we also look at things to do with how can I call it? Under the problem statements, it's not really always about the money or the revenue that we are going to make, but there are solutions that we will always prioritize because they're going to push financial inclusion, they're going to improve lives of women. So there are those, but those key factors come into: are you aligned to a strategy? Are you, is it a new innovative product? And then, are you agile enough? Can you develop as fast as we want so that we can go speed to market? Go to market is time to the market is very important to us. So that is basically, and also maybe lastly, scalability. We usually want to partner with people who are seeing themselves scale across our footprint. So we always discuss with our partners whether they can scale, and if it works well in one OpCo, we can always through MTN Group sell it to the other OpCos for adoption. So that is majorly what we look out for. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, I think we have to leave it on that note for the sake of time, which is a shame because there's much more I'd like to discuss. But I think it just remains to me to say thank you very much to the panel. But actually, before closing, Juliana, I see you came off mute. If anyone has something they would really like to do, give them over to others. But I think with that, in which case it just remains to me to say thank you very much for the panel, for all of the time that they gave today. It's really appreciated. If you'd like to stay in touch or to follow, to see more on any of what was presented, it's all there. And I think with that, I'll close and say have the rest of the day wherever you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.